Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from Indonesia and good morning to you who is in European time zone. Good day and good evening maybe to you from different part of the world. My name is Novi and today I'd like to guide you to this workshop. It's good to see you all. I hope everyone is safe during this difficult time in some region especially. Hopefully everything will get better soon. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this workshop is organized by RDI, Resilience Development Initiative, one of the think tanks active in the field of renewable energy, together with GIZ, Germany, and 11 international organizations spread across 8 countries in the European Union, Africa, and South America under the program of Digital Biogas Global Cooperation or DiBiCoo. DiBiCoo project aims to increase biogas market uptake in Indonesia and accelerate the biogas development in developing countries, one of which is Indonesia. Therefore, RDI and DiBiCoo intend to hold a workshop involving biogas industry players in Indonesia to discuss how to accelerate biomethane as one of the potential utilization of biogas in Indonesia. We would like to thank to those who support this workshop, including the speakers and discussions who joined today. Our workshop topic is Accelerating Biomethane Utilization in Indonesia, Lesson Learned from European Countries. Special greetings to our invited guests. I can mention some of them here. To the representative from Directorate General of Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Republic Indonesia. Participants from BPPT, the Agency for the Assessment and Application of Technology, from Bappenas or LCDI Indonesia, members of Indonesian Biogas Association, from BPDPKS, GAPKI, USAID, GIZ Explore, and many other organizations and private companies. Thank you for being with us today. So the topic today workshop apparently attracted many biogas enthusiasts from different countries. Of course, we have from Indonesia. We also have from Italy, Spain, Germany, India, Nigeria, Malaysia, and many more. Thank you everyone for joining both in Zoom meeting here and in YouTube. I believe everyone is excited to listen to the presentation and discussion. Our workshop will be chaired by Mr. Muhammad Abdul Khalik. He is the chairman of Indonesian Biogas Association, also a director of Center for Environment Technology in BPPT, or the Agency for the Assessment and Application in Indonesia. He will invite our 3 speakers. Our first session, here maybe organizer, you can also show the agenda of today. Our first session is by Ms. Andrea Febi as the Director of Bioenergy Directorate, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Indonesia, who's today, I heard, will be represented by Mr. Troyes. And they will give welcome remarks and the talk about the market outlook of Bio-CNG in Indonesia. The presentation will be followed by panel discussion. Oh, okay. Afterwards, to listen about the biomethane utilization in Europe, we have Mr. Herman Dekker on the second session. He is the Director of European Biogas Association, who will present on Bio-CNG uses and policy support. And then the third session speaker is Mr. Alexei Mozgovoy. He is the Business Development Manager of International Biomethane at Planet Biogas Technique. Mr. Alexei will talk about best practice experience of biomethane utilization in Germany. This second and the third session will be followed by panel discussion again. As for the panel discussion, we will have the discussants or the panelists who will give their comments, insights, and share their experience in the discussion. Mr. Windri Aji Brata already with us today. He is an energy and sustainability specialist in PT Smart Tbk, and Mr. Franz Kirchmeier from Compost and Biogas Verband Oostenrijk or AKBOE. Lastly, we will have a Q&A session so that the participants can also raise their questions. Okay, now we would like to remind you the rules of this workshop. Yeah, you can read on the screen. The rule of this workshop: please rename your account to name followed by institution or affiliation. For example, for Mr. Abdul from PTL BPPT, you can write Abdul-PTL BPPT. And then participants, please fill the attendance form. Also, please do not turn on your microphone and camera during the speaker's presentation session. And then write down your question in the chat box or YouTube live chat with this format. And then the speaker's presentation will be available at the link here. And we also have activated interpretation feature. You can click the interpretation symbol here on the meeting control and select your desirable language, Indonesia or English. And as for the question, Bahasa Indonesia is welcome. All right, so we hope everyone can follow this rule so that our workshop will run smoothly. To start the first session, now I would like to give the time to the moderator of today, Mr. Abdul Holik. And I would like to greet again Ibu Febi from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. I just got informed and very happy to welcome Ibu Andrea, Miss Andrea, to join us today. So she will also give the presentation. And please allow me to introduce you a little bit about our moderator today. So our moderator, his name is, we usually call him Mr. Mak or Mr. Abdul Holik. He is a senior engineer at BPPT and he has 15 years professional experience in biogas from organic waste and wastewater. He has a education background with doctoral degree from University of Saarland in biochemical engineering and sustainability assessment of biotechnology process, and Master of Science from TU Hamburg in process engineering and bachelor degree from TH Nuremberg in chemical engineering. I think that's all, a little bit introduction about our moderator today. So let me give the time to Mr. Abdul Holik, please.
Thank you very much, Mbak Novi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Abdul Holik, Director of the Center for Environmental Technology at the Agency for the Assessment and Application of Technology, a government agency for technology in Indonesia. I'm Chairman of Indonesian Biogas Association and also Vice Chairman of Asia Pacific Biogas Alliance. It is a great honor for me to be the moderator for this webinar on accelerating biomethane utilization in Indonesia, lesson learned from European countries. In about 2 hours, we will have 3 presenters to discussants, and we should have about 20 minutes for discussion or Q&A. In the first session, we will have Bu Febi. Bu Febi is the Director of Bioenergy under the Ministry for Energy and Mineral Resource, and she will give a welcoming speech and present directly after that about projection for the Bio-CNG market in Indonesia. And after that, Pak Windri will give his comments, remark, or possibly also some questions to Bu Febi. Mbak Novi, please introduce Bu Febi and Pak Windri to the audience first.
Okay. Could organizer please show the screen of our CV of Miss Febi? Okay, so Miss Andrea or Miss Febi, we call her, is currently the Director of Bioenergy at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Republic of Indonesia. She has more than 10 years experience with renewable energy, especially in bioenergy in the scope of policy. Ms. Febi has a Master of Environmental and Infrastructure Planning from Groningen University and Master of Development Planning and Management Infrastructure from Bandung Institute of Technology.
Thank you, Mbak Novi. And now, Bu Febi, you have 20 minutes time for your welcoming speech and your presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Abdul Holik. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning for the colleague from Germany. Okay, thank you very much. I'm so sorry because I thought that I will give just welcome remark, not presentation, but as mentioned by the moderator that I also will give the presentation. Maybe my colleague will share the presentation, and then because most of the participants from Indonesia, I think, so I will deliver the presentation in Indonesia. And also, I'm so sorry because the presentation is prepared in Indonesian language. I'm so sorry for the colleague who cannot follow the presentation. But I hope the interpreter can help what have I mentioned, so all of us can follow the material. Oke, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore, salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Pertama-tama puji dan syukur sama-sama kita panjatkan kehadiran Allah Subhanahu wa taala atas rahmatnya. Alhamdulillah pada sore hari ini kita dapat sama-sama berkumpul di dalam kegiatan RDI, workshop RDI series 2 ini ya, dengan topik Accelerating Biomethane Utilisation in Indonesia, Lesson Learned from Europe Countries. Pertama-tama kami mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Resilient Development Initiative sebagai mitra pemerintah, dalam hal ini Kementerian SDM dalam pengembangan energi baru terbarukan. Terima kasih Ibu Elizabeth yang di sini juga bersama-sama kita sudah hadir. Kemudian juga kami mengucapkan terima kasih kepada seluruh narasumber yang hari ini akan sharing pengalaman terkait dengan penerapan biometannya yang ada di negara-negara Eropa. Kemudian juga terima kasih kepada para praktisi ataupun akademisi di bidang pengembangan biogas yang juga hadir pada hari ini, serta Bapak Ibu peserta dari webinar. Kita sama-sama mengetahui saat ini hampir semua negara concern untuk mendorong pengembangan energi baru terbarukan. Ini teman-teman bisa nge-share screen kami ya. Oke, mungkin lanjut ya. Kalau kita melihat saat ini hampir semua negara mendorong untuk upaya transisi energi, termasuk Indonesia. Kita juga mendorong untuk pemanfaatan energi baru terbarukan ini dalam rangka kita juga mewujudkan komitmen kita terkait dengan transisi energi, baik itu di skala global maupun skala nasional, dalam rangka mengurangi ketergantungan kita terhadap energi fosil, kemudian juga mengurangi impor bahan bakar, serta meningkatkan ketahanan energi nasional. Selain itu juga kita berupaya untuk bisa meningkatkan neraca perdagangan kita dengan mengurangi impor minyak, serta meningkatkan kualitas lingkungan kita. Berbagai regulasi dan peraturan telah diterbitkan oleh pemerintah guna mendukung upaya pengembangan energi baru terbarukan, seperti PP 79 tahun 2019 tentang Kebijakan Energi Nasional, kemudian juga Perpres nomor 22 tahun 2017 tentang Rencana Umum Energi Nasional, di mana kita sudah mendeklar komitmen kita untuk bisa mencapai target 23% pengembangan energi baru terbarukan di tahun 2025. Meskipun kalau kita melihat capaian kita saat ini baru di kisaran 11,2%, di mana kalau kita lihat, mohon izin ini ada gangguan, kita stop sebentar bisa.
Let's wait a little bit because Miss Feby, we need to wait a little bit for because there is calling for prayer time. So let's just wait for a few minutes. Meanwhile, I would like to remind to you all, the participants of workshop today, to rename your name on Zoom with your name followed by institution or affiliation, so that we know from which organization you are. Okay, we're waiting. I would like to remind you that the organizer already sent information on chat box for the Q&A session. You can send the question through chat box first with the format of Q, that's speaker name, underscore your name, and then your institution, and follow with your question. You can ask question using Indonesian or English. Both are welcome. Oh, there's a question from Jamila Bravo asking about, may I share about the DIY digester for these few minutes while we're waiting for Miss Fabi? Please could you wait a little bit, maybe Miss Fabi will soon resume her talk. Miss Fabi, are you ready? We're still checking on her availability. Okay, now she's here. Welcome back, Miss Fabi.
Oke, sorry. Ya, jadi kita lanjutkan ya. Tadi terkait regulasi, jadi memang sudah ada beberapa regulasi untuk mensupport pengembangan energi baru terbarukan di tahun 2025. Tetapi memang kalau kita melihat saat ini capaian kita itu masih di kisaran 11,2%, jadi baru setengah dari target yang kita tetapkan di tahun 2025. Nah, untuk itu pemerintah melakukan berbagai upaya strategi percepatan EBT ini, yaitu yang pertama sekali adalah kita mencoba untuk melakukan substitusi energi primer maupun energi final. Nah, di dalam hal ini kita tetap menggunakan teknologi yang ada, seperti yang sekarang sudah berjalan dengan sangat bagus, yaitu B30, di mana kita melakukan substitusi solar dengan biodiesel. Kemudian yang saat ini juga kita dorong adalah kita melakukan substitusi untuk biomasa di PLTU batubara, di mana batubara yang digunakan nanti secara parsial akan kita substitusi dengan biomasa, baik itu nanti biomasa yang berasal dari tanaman energi, kemudian juga dari limbah ataupun dari sampah kota. Kemudian strategi berikutnya dalam pencapaian EBT ini adalah kita melakukan konversi energi primer. Nah, di sini kita melakukan penggantian teknologinya. Teknologinya yang akan kita ganti seperti PLTD ataupun PLTU nantinya akan kita ganti dengan pembangkit-pembangkit EBT, apakah itu nanti bisa juga dengan biogas dan yang lain-lain. Kemudian kita juga melakukan upaya untuk penambahan kapasitas energi baru terbarukan. Nah, ini khususnya dalam hal kita memenuhi demand-demand baru, di mana memang fokus kita di sini kita memanfaatkan PLTS, karena PLTS saat ini yang secara ekonomi sudah cukup layak secara komersial. Kemudian yang terakhir adalah kita juga mendorong pemanfaatan EBT untuk non-listrik, baik itu untuk bahan bakar nabati, kemudian biobriket, biogas, biometan, dan lain-lain. Nah, ini beberapa strategi kita untuk ke depan. Kemudian kalau kita melihat komitmen Indonesia untuk penurunan emisi gas rumah kaca, ini juga kita sudah merumuskan komitmen global terhadap Paris Agreement itu yang disahkan di dalam menjadi komitmen nasional melalui Undang-Undang Nomor 16 Tahun 2016, di mana kita sudah menetapkan target penurunan emisi gas rumah kaca kita sebesar 29% dengan upaya kita sendiri. Kemudian diharapkan dengan adanya bantuan dari pihak internasional, kita harapkan kita bisa menurunkan emisi gas rumah kaca kita hingga 41%. Dan untuk sektor energi sendiri, kita punya target untuk bisa menurunkan emisi gas rumah kaca sebesar 314 juta ton CO2 hingga 398 juta ton CO2 pada tahun 2030 nanti. Nah, saat ini pemerintah juga sedang menyusun long-term strategi. Nah, ini dalam rangka kita menuju ke net zero emission. Di sini kita juga sudah berkolaborasi dengan teman-teman dari KLHK, teman-teman dari Bappenas untuk bisa menyusun net zero karbon kita, di mana ini masih menjadi diskusi panjang tahun berapa Indonesia bisa menuju ke net zero emission. Apakah itu nanti di tahun 2050, 2060, ataupun tahun 2070. Sudah banyak negara-negara yang mendeklar bahwa tahun 2050 mereka akan menuju ke net zero emission, tetapi untuk Indonesia saat ini kita masih melakukan kajian-kajian untuk bisa memastikan kapan kita bisa menuju ke net zero emission. Lanjut ya, Mbak. Nah, untuk mencapai net zero emission ini, lanjut saja. Beberapa upaya yang kita dorong adalah dengan melakukan penyediaan listrik melalui pembangkit-pembangkit EBT, kemudian juga melakukan penerapan efisiensi energi, kemudian menggunakan bahan bakar nabati, kemudian juga implementasi co-firing, kemudian juga pemanfaatan kendaraan listrik dan juga menuju untuk transisi menuju bahan bakar rendah karbon dan teknologi pembangkit yang bersih. Di mana di sini kita berharap nantinya peran dari biogas ini juga cukup signifikan untuk bisa mensupport energi bersih yang menjadi salah satu upaya kita untuk bisa mencapai transisi energi maupun nanti kalau kita akan menuju ke net zero emission. Lanjut. Nah, program biogas sendiri ini merupakan salah satu program di pemanfaatan EBT yang diharapkan juga nantinya bisa berkontribusi di dalam capaian 23% di tahun 2025. Nah, kalau kita melihat peran biogas sebagai bahan bakar rendah karbon ini cukup signifikan karena dapat diaplikasikan untuk bisa mensubstitusi energi fosil di hampir seluruh sektor ya, baik itu di sektor kelistrikan, kemudian transportasi, industri, dan juga rumah tangga. Nah, salah satu bentuk biogas yang saat ini sedang didorong oleh pemerintah ini adalah juga pengembangan biometan. Kalau biogas, penggunaan biogas untuk pembangkit ini kita sudah jalan sebenarnya, kemudian biogas untuk cooking juga sudah ada beberapa yang jalan meskipun mungkin secara komersial memang belum berkembang. Nah, yang biometan ini memang masih masuk baru untuk Indonesia dan ini yang ke depan kita coba dorong. Nah, kalau kita melihat dari sisi teknis, Bio-CNG ini juga memiliki berbagai keunggulan kalau kita bandingkan dengan LNG. Kemudian juga dari sisi emisi yang dihasilkan juga jauh lebih rendah dari bahan bakar fosil. Namun kalau kita melihat dari sisi komersialnya, nah ini masih menjadi tantangan buat kita bagaimana kita bisa menyediakan biometan ini dengan harga yang affordable untuk masyarakat. Nah, adapun lanjut ya. Nah, adapun upaya-upaya pemerintah dalam rangka mendorong pengembangan Bio-CNG ini adalah untuk Kementerian SDM sendiri saat ini kita sedang melakukan revisi SNI biogas bertekanan tinggi karena sebenarnya kita sudah mempunyai standar nasional untuk biogas bertekanan tinggi. Tetapi ini memang saat itu sudah didevelop cukup lama di tahun 2014 sehingga memang ada perubahan-perubahan yang kita butuh improvement. Nah, saat ini kita mencoba untuk bisa melakukan adjustment untuk RSNI tersebut. Nah, kemudian kita juga melakukan kerjasama dengan donor, dalam hal ini dengan GGI, untuk bisa melakukan kajian terkait dengan studi pasar pemanfaatan Bio-CNG. Nah, ini sudah dilakukan di Kalimantan Tengah dan Kalimantan Timur yang memang mempunyai industri sawit yang cukup besar ya. Nah, ini sudah dilakukan di tahun 2019 hingga tahun 2020 kemarin. Nah, sekarang kita sedang mencoba untuk bisa melihat proyek-proyek yang potensial yang bisa kita kembangkan FS-nya untuk yang Bio-CNG ini. Nah, kemudian kami juga melakukan kerjasama dengan teman-teman GIZ untuk bisa melakukan pre-FS implementasi pilot project Bio-CNG skala industri dari limbah jagung dan juga skam padi yang ada di Lombok. Nah, ini saat ini juga sedang berlangsung. Nanti mudah-mudahan ini juga bisa segera terlaksana dengan baik. Kemudian kami juga ada kegiatan untuk pengembangan Bio-CNG di pabrik tapioka di Baka. Nah, ini juga nanti kami harapkan teman-teman dari GCI juga bisa mensupport hal tersebut. Nah, selain itu, saat ini juga pihak swasta sudah mengembangkan Bio-CNG Plan, yaitu fasilitas Bio-CNG yang ada di Dharma Satya Nusantara di Kalimantan Timur. Nah, di sini juga PT DSN ini sudah mampu menghasilkan listrik sebesar 1,2 megawatt serta gas biometan dengan kapasitas hingga 280 meter kubik per jam. Nah, mudah-mudahan ini bisa menjadi cikal bakal pengembangan biometan yang ada di Indonesia. Dan kita harapkan keberhasilan dari DSN ini nantinya juga bisa direplikasi di PKS-PKS lainnya karena potensinya juga cukup bagus. Nah, dari hasil kajian pasar yang dilakukan oleh GGI terdapat beberapa opsi, lanjut Mbak. Terdapat beberapa opsi model komersialisasi untuk Bio-CNG ke depan ini. Apakah itu nanti akan dilakukan secara captive ya, konsumsi sendiri, di mana bahan bakunya ini dipasok oleh pabrik sendiri, kemudian hasil Bio-CNG-nya juga digunakan untuk kebutuhan pabrik, sehingga ketergantungan terhadap energi bisa dihilangkan dengan adanya biometan ini. Kemudian opsi kedua adalah dengan menjual eksesnya, di mana di sini Bio-CNG yang dihasilkan akan digunakan untuk kebutuhan sendiri, nah kemudian sisanya ini akan disalurkan baik ke PKS lain ataupun ke industri-industri yang ada di sekitarnya. Nah, kemudian opsi yang ketiga itu adalah dengan reseller, di mana di sini Bio-CNG dijual dan didistribusikan oleh pihak lain sebagai reseller. Nah, di sini kita nanti mungkin perlu komunikasi dan juga koordinasi dengan teman-teman migas ya untuk bisa memanfaatkan pasar ataupun tata niaga CNG ataupun Jargas yang saat ini sudah ada. Jadi nanti bisa kita sinergikan ataupun kita blending dengan Jargas yang ada saat ini. Nah,
3
kemudian
menit ya Bu ya. 3 menit lagi Bu. 3 menit lagi.
Baik. Yang terakhir adalah dengan clustering. Nah, di sini Bio-CNG ini digunakan di PKS-PKS ataupun industri secara bersama-sama ya. Jadi dalam satu cluster. Lanjut. Nah, meskipun memang kalau kita melihat di sini peluangnya cukup besar, tetapi juga kita lanjut Mbak. Tapi kita juga menghadapi beberapa tantangan. Selain juga peluang yang bisa kita dorong ke depan. Nah, kalau kita melihat dari sisi peluang, ketersediaan dan ketersediaan bahan baku cukup, tetapi kemudian tantangannya itu adalah harga bahan bakunya nanti ya, khususnya harga produk yang akan dihasilkan. Dan kemudian dari sisi tata niaga pun, pasar tata niaga dan pasar energi fosil saat ini kan sudah cukup mapan. Dan kemudian Bio-CNG ini dapat memanfaatkan rantai pasok dan pasar energi fosil yang saat ini sudah ada. Jadi tadi seperti yang saya sampaikan, bisa di-blending ke produk-produk jaringan gas yang ada. Kemudian masalah standar dan spesifikasi teknis, nah ini kami dari sisi pemerintah juga terus mengupayakan supaya nanti bisa kita improve standar-standar yang ada, juga spek-spek teknis yang kita sesuaikan dengan kondisi yang ada saat ini. Termasuk nanti bagaimana kebutuhan dari konsumennya. Nah, kemudian untuk dukungan teknologi, nah ini juga harapan kita nanti bisa terus kita dorong untuk pengembangan teknologinya. Harapan kita TKDN-nya juga bisa kita tingkatkan. Kemudian untuk masalah tata kelola, kemudian juga investasi. Nah, ini juga menjadi salah satu tantangan tersendiri untuk pengembangan investasinya. Kemudian juga masalah koordinasi lintas sektor, karena terus terang kalau kita bicara masalah Bio-CNG ini nantinya bukan hanya di Kementerian SDM, kita juga perlu melakukan komunikasi, koordinasi, dan sinergi dengan KL ataupun stakeholder lainnya. Dan yang menjadi salah satu tantangan juga, memang saat ini kebijakan terkait Bio-CNG, khususnya regulasi yang benar-benar spesifik untuk Bio-CNG ini memang belum ada. Nah, ini juga ya ibaratnya seperti telur dan ayam, mana duluan, Mbak? Produknya duluan yang ada, baru kemudian ada regulasi, atau regulasi dulu baru kemudian produk. Karena buat kami sendiri, kenapa kami menunggu produk itu ada, baru kemudian kita develop regulasi, harapan kami supaya nanti produk ini bisa berkembang dengan baik. Pengalaman kami di dalam pengembangan berbagai bioenergi lainnya, ketika regulasi sudah di-develop, kemudian produknya itu belum berkembang dengan bagus, nah ini kemudian antara regulasi dan kemudian produk yang dihasilkan itu kadang-kadang tidak match, sehingga akhirnya produk itu tidak bisa berkembang dengan baik. Lanjut, Pak. Nah, mungkin itu yang bisa kami sampaikan. Sekali lagi kami mengucapkan terima kasih banyak kepada RDI yang sudah menyelenggarakan kegiatan ini, dan juga terima kasih kepada seluruh narasumber, penanggap, dan juga para peserta yang hadir pada sore hari ini. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Bu Febi, for the nice, very informative presentation. Bu Febi highlight the energy mix target and the gap, the contribution of biogas in 2025, targeted almost 500 million meter cubic, and Bu Febi highlight also the alternative of the utilization of biogas, the government support on preparation of regulation and standard, market study on and development of Bio-CNG, and as well as the opportunities and value of it. Some keyword: net zero emission, biogas contribution on energy mix, biogas development, biogas utilization, Bio-CNG market, Bio-CNG development, and opportunities and barriers of it. Thank you very much again, Bu Febi, for the nice and informative presentation. Now we come to the remark or comment or question from Pak Windri. But first, let Mbak Novi to introduce Pak Windri to the audience.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abdul. So here we have Mr. Windri Ajibrata. Mr. Windri holds bachelor degree in industrial engineering from Bandung Institute of Technology. Currently, he is working for PT Smart in Energi and Sustainability Department that focuses on energy efficiency and sustainable energy implementation in palm oil. Previously, Pak Windri have working experience in palm oil, project developer, and government consultant related to bioenergy. Mr. Windri mainly works in the field of bioenergy from agricultural waste for project management, design engineering, and business development.
Thank you, Mbak Novi. Pak Windri, you have time about 10-15 minutes. Time is yours.
Ya, thank you, Pak Mak. Halo, selamat siang Ibu Febi. Apa kabar ya, Bu?
Ya, sehat, Pak.
Baru ketemu lagi nih, Bu. Mohon maaf waktu itu belum sempat pamitan secara langsung, Bu.
Iya, ini saya lihat udah di PT Smart.
Iya, Bu. Kebetulan saya sekarang bekerja di PT Smart, Bu. Namun tidak jauh-jauh, masih berhubungan dengan energi terbarukan, Bu. Ya, menanggapi presentasi yang sangat baik dari Bu Febi tadi tentang biometana. Beliau sudah menyampaikan tadi bahwa masih ada tantangan dan peluang ya dari pengembangan biometana ini, di samping potensinya memang sangat besar sekali ya, terutama dari limbah-limbah agricultural waste di Indonesia yang sangat melimpah, yaitu dari kelapa sawit, tapioka, bahkan dari solid waste pun bisa juga. Nah, ini sebenarnya peluang yang sangat baik untuk kita kembangkan bersama. Namun tadi Bu Febi sempat sebutkan beberapa tantangan, yaitu terkait akses pendanaan, kemudian masalah teknologi, kemudian koordinasi. Namun di saat ini mungkin saya mau menyoroti lebih ke masalah market ya. Karena kebetulan sekarang saya sudah bekerja di perusahaan salah satu perusahaan sawit, di mana kalau kami di sini kan sekarang bertindak sebagai supplier ya Bu, supplier bahan baku untuk biometana. Jadi mungkin dari sisi kami, dari sisi finansial dulu pun saat saya di GSEN, kami sudah pernah studi Bu bersama. Jadi kalau biometana ini sebenarnya masih sangat bisa bersaing jika dengan bahan bakar fosil, terutama bila kita memanfaatkannya untuk menggantikan LPG maupun diesel. Apalagi kalau kondisinya di remote area ya Bu, di mana kalau di remote area tentunya ketersediaan LPG dan juga diesel ini akan lebih sulit untuk didapat. Dan juga dari sisi harga juga biasanya memang harganya lebih tinggi daripada yang ada di istilahnya kota-kota besar ya. Jadi di sini sebenarnya tantangan yang peluang yang sangat baik untuk pengembangan biometana. Cuman mungkin kendalanya dari sisi kami, dari sisi bahan baku tentunya sudah tersedia melimpah dari limbah sawit. Namun kadang kesulitan kami adalah untuk utilisasinya Bu, karena mungkin Ibu juga sudah tahu bahwa kalau kebutuhan energi di pabrik sawit itu sudah cukup terpenuhi oleh limbah dari sawit itu sendiri. Nah, kalau kita mau memproduksi biogas atau biometana, kemungkinan besar kan kita harus jual keluar ya, kita jual ke eksternal. Nah, kadang di sinilah kesulitan kami. Nah, untuk case biometana ini tentunya kita harus mencari market yang bisa menyerap biometana ini di lokasi yang terdekat dari pabrik kami. Nah, untuk itu mungkin tujuan terdekat tentunya kota-kota terdekat ataupun industri terdekat. Nah, mungkin disinilah pemerintah juga bisa ikut mensupport Bu dalam hal sosialisasi dan juga meningkatkan awareness dari sisi marketnya agar market ini bisa lebih memahami Bu pentingnya biometana seperti apa dan juga manfaatnya bagi lingkungan sebagai energi ramah lingkungan yang dapat menurunkan emisi. Nah, mungkin bisa diberi sedikit komentar Bu, bagaimana sih peran dari EBTK itu sendiri dalam meningkatkan awareness Bu dari pihak mungkin industri, komersial ataupun bahkan masyarakat umum ya mengenai biometana ini Bu. Ya mungkin itu dulu Bu, terima kasih.
Terima kasih, thank you Pak Windri. Bu Febi, your comment?
Ya, baik. Baik, makasih banyak Mas Windri untuk pertanyaannya. Iya, kalau misal untuk sosialisasi, kita sebenarnya di dalam setiap kegiatan-kegiatan promosi kita, ini kan sebenarnya kita juga selalu menyampaikan bahwa ada peluang yang bisa kita kembangkan saat ini, seperti Bio-CNG, salah satunya tadi untuk bisa menggantikan LPG, karena kita juga tahu saat ini LPG kita itu kita impor hingga 70%, 70 hingga 80% LPG kita itu kita impor. Sehingga kalau kita bisa mengembangkan Bio-CNG ini, nah ini menjadi salah satu cara lah. Nah, dan kemudian tahun ini juga kita rencana akan mengadakan kegiatan BioShare. Nah, di sini Bioenergi nanti akan membuat kegiatan-kegiatan webinar yang secara berseris lah ya, dengan topik-topik yang berbeda, di mana salah satunya ini adalah terkait dengan Bio-CNG ini. Nah, ini yang akan kita coba lakukan secara masif untuk bisa mendorong agar selain mendorong pengembangan juga memberikan informasi ataupun edukasi kepada masyarakat, kepada juga mungkin industri ya, supaya mereka juga bisa tahu bahwa ada peluang lain loh yang bisa kita lakukan. Meskipun memang kalau kita melihat untuk transportasinya memang agak sulit ini masih ya, karena kalau mau ditaruh di tabung, tabungnya juga harus bertekanan ya. Nah ini mungkin juga dari sisi teknologi kita mencari upaya lah bagaimana kemasan ataupun packingnya ini bisa menjadi lebih simple dan mudah untuk ditransportasikan. Mungkin demikian Mas Windri.
Ada komentar balik Pak Windri?
Ya, terima kasih Bu. Ya, saya rasa EBTK juga bisa lebih banyak berkolaborasi Bu dengan perusahaan swasta dan juga BUMN ya, terutama kan kita punya Pertagas, PGN yang cukup besar dan karena kita tahu sendiri salah satu opsinya adalah menggunakan jaringan gas ya Bu. Jadi kalau mereka bisa terlibat itu akan sangat baik Mudah-mudahan biometan ini bisa lebih cepat lagi berkembang dalam mendukung bauran energi kita. Mungkin itu dulu Pak Mak dari saya, Pak. Terima kasih, Pak.
Terima kasih Bu Febi, terima kasih Pak Windri. We have still time, some minutes for this session. Possibly Mr. Harman Dekker or Alexei Moskovai or Pak Franz Kirchmeier, do you have any question or remark or comments? Please, short but briefly.
I have just one question, if I may, for Ms. Phoebe. You're talking about chicken and egg situation, very recognizable in every country where new alternative fuels are being uptaken. Is it because I've been doing some reading on how the fuels are being distributed within Indonesia. And I see a lot of subsidies, government subsidies going still towards, for example, fossil fuels, but also to renewable energies like solar and wind. Is it maybe an idea to ensure that when we really want to uptake biomethane, that is going to be subsidized as well, just to accelerate the production?
The voice is lost here.
So, can you hear?
I cannot hear the last.
So,
yeah.
Sorry about that. So my question was, as fossil fuels are being subsidized, as well as other renewables like solar and wind, is it an idea maybe to also subsidize biomethane, just to ensure that this chicken and egg situation is going to be broken and that you really can accelerate the production? Thank you.
Pak Harman ini mengusulkan ada subsidi untuk biomethane, Bio-CNG ini untuk di awal, Ibu, untuk mempercepat proses. Ya, Bu, silakan.
Yeah, regarding the subsidy, because it's quite difficult for us to mention now, is it any subsidy or not for the Bio-CNG, because for this time, the regulation is not been there, but we have to have some assessment to see what is the benefit of the Bio-CNG, and then what is cost and benefit from the Bio-CNG. And if it is, we need the subsidy, we can propose, but again, because the subsidy is not the domain of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, we have to discuss with the Ministry of Finance. So they will assess it. Yeah, it takes time, absolutely. But yeah, the opportunity is there. But again, we have to make sure that the benefit that we will get is higher than the cost that we will spend. I think like that.
Thank you. Do you have any comment back?
Yeah, the only thing is, I know it is very difficult to implement. Subsidies are always difficult to implement. But I think that, that it will be more in my presentation, but biogas is providing quite a lot of advantages which should be supported.
Or we can also try to find some green fund like that, for example, maybe possibly. Yeah,
it's possible. Yeah, and as mentioned by Mas Windri, that actually, if we see the cost is still competitive. So yeah, maybe we can looking for the other scheme that we can deliver the product with the price that's still competitive with the fossil fuel.
Okay, thank you. Very nice discussion, but we have to move forward to the next presenter. In this case, Mr. Herman Dekker also, and he will talk about the Bio-CNG use and policy support, success stories, and lessons learned from Europe. He is director of the European Biogas Association, but more about Mr. Herman Dekker, please, Mbak Novi.
Yeah, okay. So Mr. Herman Dekker has worked for almost 15 years within the sustainability sector and is devoted to the mitigation of climate change. With both a technical as well as business administration background, he has built his career in the water and gas sector, where he has held various management positions. He joins the EBA after being involved in the biogas sector for over 5 years. During those years, he is not only focused on expansion of biogas and in particular biomethane, but also on the implementation of techniques such as bio-LNG, biomethanol, biohydrogen, and bioplastic.
Thank you, Mbak Novi. We have Mr. Herman Dekker. You will have about 20 minutes time. Start now. Floor is yours, please.
Selamat sore. Many thanks for being here. It is my pleasure actually to present again in Indonesia. And I've spent over the past few years also my time within Malaysia and Indonesia, so it's a real pleasure to be back at this workshop. So just a little bit about the European Biogas Association. And the next slide, please. We are an association with more than which exists of more than 40 countries connected, or national biogas associations connected to the EBA, with over, it's now already 130 companies which have joined directly, and we represent within Europe around 7,000 stakeholders. Those stakeholders can be producers, of course, but it can also be technology providers, traders, or gas grid owners, which are also connected to our associations. We are actually present in Brussels. We have a secretariat there consisting of 8 people, and we work day and night to ensure that biogas, biomethane is being recognized and supported within Europe. Next slide, please. Now, biogas and biomethane, or let's focus on biomethane and just cover it, the whole biogas chain. It is actually a unique gas. And why is it unique? Because it's really at the heart of the green development. Because we are not only tackling transport emissions, or we are only not tackling waste, we are tackling with biogas a lot of the problems at the same time. And there is not one renewable energy who can do that. In that way, we are unique. So when creating biogas and biomethane, we are on one part contributing to a better agriculture. For Indonesia, that would mean that we can contribute really to, for example, the pomi or tapioca. But we're also, of course, contributing to the environment and health, are answering actually a lot of the United Nations development goals. We curb climate and air pollution and climate change, and we promote biodiversity all at the same time. This is unique, and it is not very well understood at policy level that we are a multi-problem solver, if you like. Next slide. Before I go into this slide, just before I presented here, I just made a quick calculation what the advantage could be of capturing only on for palm oil mill effluent, the advantage could be for Indonesia as country. I believe that there are around, but I estimate a little bit lower, but I believe that there are around more than 350 biogas plants or POMI plants within Indonesia, palm oil mill effluent. If they all are producing 750 cube on average of biogas could produce, that could actually curb the CO2 emissions of Indonesia by 5 to 10% only because we capture the methane emissions, which otherwise normally would just flow into the air. So it is a real prohibition of methane emissions. 5 to 10%, which is a large amount. And then we don't even account the displacement in the fossil fuels. So when you look at this slide, you can already see that when you apply biomethane as a fuel, it can have, and that is in the yellow box right on the right-hand side, it can even have negative emissions. And especially when you look at tapioca or you look at palm oil mill effluent, this is the case as well. So biogas and biomethane are really giving a huge opportunity for Indonesia as country to curb its CO2 emissions. Just to have a look on the far right-hand side, if you look to the battery electric vehicles, there you see that still the emissions are above the zero emission line. And that is due to the fact that the manufacturing, but also the end of life of a car is producing some CO2. So it is always positive, although when you take in on board biomethane as a fuel, you can be negative. Next slide, please. Just to give you a little flavor on how Bio-CNG is being implemented in Europe. And it was by the previous speaker already elaborated, it can be a little bit difficult to actually implement it. However, when you look at, for example, countries like Sweden, where you see 94% of the total gas use in vehicles is now biomethane, it started off with only a few percent. But then they promoted Bio-CNG as the way to go. And there you see that the natural gas consumption was curbed downwards and the biomethane production went up. In total, we have now 17% biomethane already within the Bio-CNG fleet. And that is on a similar level as the green electricity within Europe. Next slide. Now, there has been asked to present some lessons learned in Europe. And I think we made one mistake within Europe. The European Commission really focused on zero emission, meaning that there is no emission coming from the tailpipe. Now, from this picture on the left, you can see that if you have, of course, you're using fossil gas and fossil petrol, you have positive emissions. That's clear. But if you only look at the zero emission from the tailpipe, you don't take into account how the electricity is being made, nor you take into account how the gas is being, the car is being manufactured. So you have to look at complete life cycle and then have to look what your CO2 path is. And then you see if you use biomethane in gas vehicles, internal combustion gas vehicles, it can be even negative. On the right-hand side, a short picture, which shows that if you use biogas or biomethane, it is actually, and especially if you go to bio-LNG, it is actually very good for especially long distances. So here, if you look at a lithium-ion battery, and you would like to go for a long distance, you have to take in an enormous amount of battery to cover your distance. But if you're going to use biomethane, either compressed or bio-LNG, actually you can drive long distances, which is of course an extra advantage. Next slide. So what we have done within Europe is, over the past few years, various reports have come out which have estimated the amount of biogas which can be produced in terawatt hours or billion cubic meters. Now, I'm a little shy showing you this graph because I know that in Indonesia alone, you might be able to reach this on your own. Those 125 billion cubic meters on top, which the International Energy Agency has predicted. Indonesia has such a vast amounts of biomass which can be used in a sustainable way to produce green biomethane. It would be a real shame it's that not going to be used. And also on the waste side, we can curb the waste and the food waste, and we can really help the cities to be circular cities, and then at the same time produce green electricity. Next slide. Just to give you a quick overview, at this current moment in the CNG fleet and the natural gas vehicles within Europe, you see that we are producing only a small part of our biomethane, which is being used in the NGV, the natural gas vehicles fleet. We will produce at least 30 BCM, billion cubic meters of biomethane in 2030. And if you take in the following, and that is quite important. If you mix natural gas with 40% of biomethane, you already have reached the 55% CO2 emission goal Europe has set. Europe has said we would like to come to a zero emission by curbing 55% reduction on the CO2 emissions. And you already can reach that by mixing natural gas with 40% of biomethane. And this is very positive because this means that you still have abundance of biomethane available to use in different sectors, like in industry or in the heating sector. Next slide. Now, we've been talking about CNG. I would like to talk a little bit about Bio-LNG as well, because we see something else coming up. Ships are going to change from heavy shipping oils to LNG ships. Those ships are in need to further greenify their fleet. And how they do that is by mixing, again, bio-LNG with fossil LNG. And in Europe, we see a very large growth of bio-LNG production in the coming years. Next slide. The beauty of that is that, and that's the same within Indonesia as well, in the harbors, the infrastructure is there already to put in the LNG stations and the filling stations to ensure that the ships can use that. So it is possible actually to also produce, first of course, biomethane, but then bio-LNG for the maritime sector as well. Next slide. Now, whether it be Bio-CNG or Bio-LNG, the impact is the same, with a reduction of minus 55% in CO2, which I told earlier. We only have to mix 40% of biomethane within the natural gas grid or within the vehicle. And I think that is the positive news, that you really can curb quickly your emissions. Next slide. So I already said that I think in Europe we have learned a lesson that if you focus only on zero emission, on the tailpipe, it's not going to work. We have to look at the total chain on where we are going to save our CO2 emissions and where we can contribute. And do not forget, we have a lot of extra, as I said in the beginning, a lot of extra positive externalities. We can promote organic fertilizers. We can solve a waste problem. We can create biodiversity and at the same time create a very, very sustainable bioenergy. So we must ensure that biomethane is going to be deployed. I would say to the Indonesian government, ensure that there is a target for the use of biomethane in transport, because this would solve the chicken and egg situation. Ensure also that you look at the total life cycle of a truck or of a car, so that you really take into account all the emissions contributing to that. And of course, you need to be aware that if you are going to implement this, you are greatly supporting the palm oil industry, the tapioca industry, the waste industry as well at the same time. And I think that's it. Next slide. A quick summary. And it's just to raise the urgency. We have no time at our hands. The climate change is going to be quick and going to be severe in the coming years. Floodings, storms will be there, and it's all as a result from our CO2 emissions. And we can curb that. Although we are already late, we can curb that, and we should take in everything into account to ensure that we are going to reach our targets. Biogas, Bio-CNG has more than one advantage. And the advantage on the CO2 emission curbing is the largest of every single alternative fuel, which is momentarily within our reach. So we should grasp that, and we should also make sure that this is going to be used also to curb waste problems, to ensure that we create organic fertilizers. Thank you for this. And if there are any questions, then please do let me know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamendeke, for the nice presentation, a lot of information, a lot of motivation, and also that European Biogas Association are working all day by day and so on. Okay, I will make some highlight from your presentation. We can learn a lot from your experience from European countries. And some keyword, I think the unique role of biogas. He solves many problems at the same time. Biogas is multi-problem solver. Interesting is also that biogas can achieve not only zero emission, but also negative emission. So many positive effect of the utilization of Bio-CNG and Bio-LNG on CO2 emission reduction. And also the other aspect of biogas is biofertilizer, biodiversity, renewable energy, and so on. At the end, in the conclusion, there's also Mr. Hamendeke highlight again the potential for the negative greenhouse gas emission, displacement of fossil fuel, displacement of carbon-intensive production of mineral fertilizer, abatement of methane emission from mineral, from waste, and also carbon sequestration. Thank you very much. I think on time, you need just a little, almost 20 minutes. But okay, but we come next to the next presentation. They will be presented by Alexi Moskovoi. I'm sorry for the wrong pronunciation. Please, Ms. Novi, to introduce Mr. Alexi to the audience.
Okay, so Mr. Alexei Mozgovoy, he is a Business Development Manager, International Biomethane at Planet Biogas Technique. In addition to gaseous and liquid biomethane, the area of his professional interest includes synthetic methane and renewable hydrogen. Alexei has more than 10 years of experience with renewable energy and natural gas supply systems. He is an author of many papers on the topic of gas mobility and biomethane, which have been published in renowned technical and scientific journals. He has organized and led many research and industrial projects on the integration of biomethane, power to gas, and bio-LNG into the energy system. His deep understanding of the national and international renewable energy policy resulting from his experience in the biogas advocating.
Thank you very much, Mbak Novi. Now we come to the third session by Alexei Mozgovoy. You will have about 20 minutes time for the presentation, and we come later to the discussion from by Mr. Franz Kichmeyer from Austria. Now we come to the third session. Mr. Alexei Mozgovoy, floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Alexei Mozgovoy, I am representing the German biogas plant manufacturer Plant AT, and I'm really glad and honored to have the chance to talk today about the biomethane experience in Germany from the previous 20 years. Speaking of biomethane, presenting the arguments and presenting the aspects of biomethane usage in Germany, experience of biomethane usage, I would focus on 5 main topics which cover technical, environmental, and political questions, like environmental protection as a door opener to the politics. What is the current status of the biomethane market in Germany, and what was its development in the previous 2 decades? Of course, usage of biomethane in different sectors, starting with power generation and then going to the transportation sector. Of course, technical requirements to the biomethane injection in the gas grids or biomethane compression or liquefaction, and of course political aspects like drivers for the Germany's biomethane industry. Plan AT, the company I'm representing, has good experience with biomethane, which we collected in different markets. One of them are European, like in France, or also in North America. So I'm will be glad to share with you experience of my company with biomethane. And in previous 20 years, since we are established, we have conducted over 500 projects worldwide. Plan AT is an active member of 2 world's biggest biogas associations, like German Biogas Association and European Biogas Association. We provide, from one hand, different solutions, biogas and biomethane solutions, for example, for power generation, for electricity sector, for heat production, which is of a special importance in Northern Europe or in Northern America, and very promising market, fuel market, biomethane as transportation fuel in compressed or liquefied form. As a company with a big history and with active political opinion, we also communicate to political decision makers the benefits of biomethane usage. And the message which we give on the hand of the government or of members of the regional or of the federal parliaments are as follows. Talking about benefits of biomethane usage, we have to mention, or I have to mention, the climate protection. First of all, using biomethane, we can reduce globally the emission of greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane. Sure, not only global benefits, but also local effects can be achieved, positive effects can be achieved by the usage of biomethane. That means, for example, using biomethane as transport fuel, we can reduce the emission of NOx and of sulfur oxides and of course particulate matters. And in big urban areas like in Beijing or in Europe, it would be Paris, the gas-driven public transportation is uptaken currently because local emission becomes very crucial aspect of daily life. Furthermore, another benefit of biomethane usage is, of course, substitution of imports of fossil fuels. That means using locally produced energy, we can reduce dependency on the imports from other countries. Of course, biomethane enables the storage of energy into the gas grid, and it can deliver a significant benefit to the biodiversity, because biogas and biomethane must not be necessarily produced from energy crops, but also can be produced from flowering plants. Talking about biomethane, I would like to make a short overview of the current situation. What numbers do we have now? What amount of biomethane will be produced in Germany and compared to Europe? Here you can see, for example, that the total amount of biogas produced in Germany is 90,000 gigawatt hours or 90 terawatt hours. 10% of biogas will be upgraded to biomethane. And if I compare the numbers in Europe and in Germany, we can clearly see that, for example, in 2016, 2017, German producers delivered more or less 50% of the total European biomethane. Now, currently, the situation has changed, and it is slightly above 1/3 of the Europe's total production of biomethane, because of two factors. First of all, in the previous years, because of political decisions in Germany, the production of biomethane slightly declined and stagnated. And on the other hand, in Europe, there are some other markets starting their biomethane production, like France, which deliver huge amount of biomethane. If we take a precise look at the current numbers, biomethane production numbers, almost 10 terawatt hours, 6% of that energy goes to the fuel market in Germany. More or less 5% will be used for heating, and almost 2% will be exported to another European countries. And the remaining 87%, well, the lion's share of the total amount of biomethane, will be used for power generation in Germany. Here in this chart, you can see the development of new biomethane projects in Germany. If we have in Europe more or less 700 biomethane plants, in Germany, it's almost 200 2020. So 1/3 of Europeans or Europe's biomethane plants are installed in Germany. On the right hand, in red color, I have shown you a comparison to the French biomethane market, rapidly growing market. And you can see that the number of new biomethane plants in France in year 2019 was 47, while in Germany, it were only 5 new biomethane plants. And on the graph, you can see in orange bars the number of new projects in each year, starting with 2006. And in green bars, you can see the accumulated number of biomethane plants. The first German biomethane plant was installed in 2006. So basically the German biomethane industry existing since 15 years. You can see that the growth was different, depends on the year, and it can be explained by the development of the incentives which were installed by the German government. But comparing German biomethane market to the plants installed in France, I would show you another picture, one more picture. As I've said, biomethane plants in Germany are existing since 15 years, while in France, it's relatively new business. So you can see, for example, that Germany started to implement major technology for upgrading, like scrubbers, like pressure swing absorption, PSA units, and altogether they make 80% of the total number of biomethane plants, while in France, new market, they implement membrane separation. At Plan AT, we provide both solutions for different markets, PSA for bigger units and membrane units for markets like French one, because units in France are, compared to Germans, are 3, 4, or even 5 times smaller in terms of production capacity. And membrane technology is very good, suitable for that. Speaking about the upgrading of biomethane, I'm going to, in the next slide, I'm going to the technical requirements for the injection of biomethane or for the usage of biomethane as compressed or liquefied gas. If we are talking about injection into the gas grid, I have to mention that according to the German law, gas grid operators take up to 75% of connection costs. And if we are talking about the operation costs for biomethane injection, it will be 100%. So of course, it's a huge support for biomethane producers. If we are talking about the compression of biomethane or liquefaction of biomethane, this number of plants is rapidly growing in Germany. There are some benefits, of course. For example, you do not need to cover the costs for gas grid connection. You can supply your own fuel, your own vehicle fleet, and you can directly enter the fuel market, transportation fuel market. Here in this chart, you can see the number of biomethane plants connected to different pressure levels. There is, in this statistics with 50 projects, you can see the different pressure levels, a number of units installed in that pressure levels, and transportation grid. To the transportation grid, almost 3/3 of biomethane plants are connected in Germany. So it's transportation grid with the pressure level over 16 bar. What technical requirements must be fulfilled if we want to inject biomethane into the gas grid. Of course, limited content on sulfur and oxygen to avoid the corrosion. No water, no dust, no compressor oil. Pressure and calorific value of biomethane have to be adjusted to the gas grid requirements or to the requirements of the end user, if we are speaking about CNG or LNG. And biomethane has to be odorized if we inject it into the natural gas grid. As I've mentioned before, with these yellow bars, you can see different development of new projects. In some year, it was more new projects. In another year, it was less project. Why is it so? As I've said before, almost 90% of biomethane in Germany will be used for power generation. Power generation from renewable energies will be supported by the Renewable Energy Act, which is established in 2000. And since then, one reviewed 6 times, basically every 3 to 4 years. The Renewable Energy Act provides support for renewable power from windmills, PV, from biogas, from biomethane. And by that law, government has an opportunity to install feed-in tariffs, for example, and to regulate the development of the market. Not every law was successful from the biogas industry point of view. And this is the reason why, for example, in the last 4 to 5 years, we have stagnating numbers in biomethane production for power generation. In the next slide, I would emphasize another market segment, transportation sector, which is quite promising, not only for Europe, but also for Germany. Here, I believe we will deal with totally different development of biomethane production. And I believe that we will have a rapid increase in the biomethane generation in the next years. The transportation sector will be regulated by the European Renewable Energy Directive, which sets the targets for biofuel in the transportation sector. This directive is existing since 2009. In 2018, there was a new edition which set more ambitious targets for biofuels. 14% of the fuel market must be provided by biofuels in every country of the European Union. 3.5% of that amount must be provided by fuels from residues and from wastes. What kind of wastes and residues belong in that group? Animal manure, sewage sludge, straw, bio-waste. These inputs, these feedstocks, are perfectly suitable for biogas and biomethane production. This is the reason why biogas plants are switching now from the power generation market, stagnating market, into the fuel production. And I believe we will have in the next 3 to 4 years much more new biomethane projects in Germany. Apart from the European regulation, in Germany, the government installed also some national regulations, like the energy tax is reduced for biomethane, which will be used as a transportation fuel. That means that you have to pay only 40% compared to the regular usage. In Germany, you have, in general, you have to pay CO2 tax for fuels, but biofuels and biomethane are accepted from CO2 taxation. So it's, of course, also a very important bonus. Another two incentives concern the fleet operators, vehicle fleet operators. For example, if you have a heavy-duty vehicle, which is running on CNG or LNG, or also Bio-CNG and Bio-LNG, you do not need to pay the toll for the highway usage. And in Germany, you can save by that up to 15,000 euros annually. And another benefit is the so-called scrapping premium for heavy-duty vehicles. That means if you have your old diesel truck and you want to buy a new one, which fits the environmental requirements, you can receive from the government up to 10,000 euros. And CNG and LNG-driven vehicles fulfill these environmental requirements. So if you put all these benefits and bonuses all together, it will be very interesting support support mechanism for the usage of biomethane in the transportation market. Speaking about information about German biomethane market, I could talk here much more time than I have. So that's why I would advise you, if someone wants to learn more about biomethane in Europe and in Germany, I advise you to go to the link to the websites which are shown in this slide to collect some more information about experience which we covered in biomethane industry in Germany or in Europe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alexei Moskovai, for the presentation. Many interesting information, development of biomethane in Europe and especially in Germany. Some key word or some important thing I not here is like Herman Decker, Alexei gave also us a conclusion of biogas. Biogas is the intelligent energy solution for the future. It is the first motivation for us. And biogas has many advantages, many benefits. Climate protection, decarbonization, defossilizing of energy, reduction of local emission, reduction of imported energy resource, storage energy in the grid. And Mr. Alexei has also highlighted the status of the biomethane production in Europe and Germany, the development of biomethane plants in Germany and France. Biogas upgrading technology developed and implemented in Germany and Europe. Many things, PSA, membrane-based, water scrubber, and so on. And interesting is also the method how to bring the biomethane to the user. Gas grid connection or non-grid by Bio-CNG and Bio-LNG. And also interesting for me is the different pressure for different utilization of Bio-CNG. Technical requirements, these are very important. We can learn from Germany in this case. And also some information about the biomethane in transportation, vehicle, gas vehicle, and so on. Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. We come to the discussion. First, Mr. Franz Kirchmeier, he is from the Compost and Biogas Verband Austria. He will give some remark, comments, or just question to the both presenter before, Herman Decker and Alexei Moskovai. But first, Mbak Novi, please introduce Franz Kirchmeier to the audience.
Okay, so Mr. Franz Kirchmeier has worked for about 30 years within the biogas sector. With both a technical background as well as project managerial experience, he has been Vice President of European Biogas Association and responsible for strategies and legal development for future development of biogas technique. For the last 15 years to date, he is leading biogas department in Austrian Compost and Biogas Association. During those years, he's not only focused on expansion of biogas technique, but also on the implementation of upgraded products such as biomethane.
Thank you very much, Mbak Novi, for the introduction of Franz Kirchmeier. We will have about 10-15 minutes for discussion. It's your time, Franz, to give your remark or comment or question, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also to Nadia for the introduction. And great thanks for the organizing this workshop, being here together. So we had now two very interesting presentations. On the one side, what are the advantages of biogas or biomethane and the possibilities beginning from the feedstock up to the technique until the application possibilities. And the second, the presentation from Planety, from Alexei, about the technical possibilities this company offers and what advantages he can bring to us. What is really interesting is that we have from a very diverse possibilities from technique, from feedstock, and from application. And what we faced during our pre-meetings was very clear that we have to be very careful by using the terms, because like in Europe, upgrading is usually meant upgrading to upgrade the biogas so it can be fed into the natural gas grid. While in other countries, it's maybe upgrading means only purify the biogas by dewatering a little bit, desulfurize a little bit, so it could be used in a CNG, in a combined heat power plant, which is in Europe usually done and not mentioned anymore. Only upgrading is mentioned if you want to upgrade it into the natural gas grid. So the second big misunderstanding during the preparation of the workshop for me was what is meant by CBG, compressed biogas, and what is the purpose for it, which application we want to have. And here we also need to be clarified, because each country or even each state, region has its own view on that. And for us is CBG, then compressed biogas, which is usually used in the transport sector, while we learn from our Indonesian friends that it could be also be bottled and be transported via bottles to the high dense cities, and they're used for cooking and heating. So this is a great difference. Coming into this, we have those solutions, what already mentioned by Harman and Alexei, with the electricity grid, the gas grid, and especially for the gas grid, if you have the gas grid available, we have to upgrade it in much higher quality than if we would have to if we use a local gas grid, or if only we bottle it. This is not saying that it's not that important bottling, but it's a complete other technique and complete other requirements. We have to be aware of that. So this is only what I want to bring into the discussion. We have those huge variety within feedstock, within technique, which we can apply, and also the application technique. And then we have to be always very clear on the possibilities in the country where we want to apply biogas or introduce biogas technique, which situation we face there, where what is their need. And this is the important thing what we have. we could see already in Europe the change within the member states, what they do with the biogas, which feedstock they use, etc. And maybe I believe it's the same for Indonesia. This is very different, and we have to be aware of that. And this is what I only want to give as pre-statement for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the remarks concerning the Indonesian somewhat that's an understanding of biogas purification, biogas upgrading. Yes, I understood that this is also some confusing misunderstanding and so on. But what I know is that biogas purification just remove the impurities such H2S and some others, and also there are also next step biogas upgrading means CO2 removal. Okay, thank you for the remark. But I give also some give in this discussion directly to the three of both of you about there was a question from the chat room about the adsorb natural gas (RNG). Is there a common practice in Europe? Maybe you can answer also this in this discussion. Please, maybe Mr. Harman Dekker first.
I would love to answer, but then I need to know what adsorbed natural gas is, because I'm not familiar with that term.
Yes, that is about the storage. Instead of pressurized, we adsorb the biomethane in such kind of micro nanoporous carbon like that, carbon active and so on, that we do not need high pressure to store it.
All right. Okay. So if I understand well, then of course the gas can be stored underground, if that it is.
Not really, but it's also, I think, what I'm understanding is also just a type of storage thing. The mechanism of the storage.
Okay. So hearing from my questions, then it is clear that it's not much use. At least it's not to me very known within Europe. Maybe Franz Kriechmeier knows more about this.
Oh, Alexi Moscow, please. Yes.
No, this I'm not familiar with that technology. I suppose it's something like what will be used for hydrogen storage.
Yes, and in this direction, I think, yes.
But I'm not sure that it will be used for methane storage and transportation.
Alexei, I didn't really get the question. Is it underground storage, what I mentioned from Harman, or what was the real question, the background of the question? And I can't also find it in the chat. Can you explain it a little bit?
That is not as Alexei Moskov said. I think that is in the direction of how we can store it, the biomethane without high pressure by adsorption mechanism. Like in this hydrogen,
okay.
like in the hydrogen storage.
Yes, you could absorb it to solid molecules, etc.
Yes, yes, in the tank.
Yes. But usually, what we talk about, like in Europe, if we need to have a huge amount of seasonal storage, because during winter time we have a high peak of energy demand, while in summertime it's warm and we don't have that much amount that need on energy, then we need to have seasonal storage. And for this, we use in Europe underground storage, means we use old caverns where since 1950s, we used it for natural gas production. We get the natural gas out of it. And now we use those caverns to pressure in biomethane and store it until wintertime. But sure, we have to be aware, this is usually high pressure storage because those caverns run up to 70 bars. And to give you an amount, how high this capacity is of these caverns, in Austria we have about the yearly demand of 9 billion cubic meters methane, and this is also the same amount we could store within our national possibilities in caverns.
Okay, thank you. We come back to the comment from Franz Kirchmeier. Maybe Mr. Herman Decker or Mr. Alexei Moskov has remark on it. What about the biogas purification, biogas upgrading, and also some misunderstanding in biomethane utilization or biogas, compressed biogas directly to bottling and so on. Please.
Yeah, I want to add something, Pak Mark.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, okay. I think the adsorbent is mostly related with the distribution method, yeah, because unlike Europe that have very good infrastructure such as gas pipeline and also good roads and roadway, highway, in Indonesia we don't have such a good infrastructure, to be honest, because we as you know, we have many islands, and mostly the source of this biomethane is come from the agricultural that located in the mostly in remote area. So we have this challenge to distribute the biomethane from the source to the market. And most likely the road infrastructure is not so good. So distribution is very important to us. That's why we're looking also to options such as bottling, CNG. But for CNG, most likely we need to use high pressure around 200 bar. And the other option is gas pipeline, also difficult because we don't have many gas pipeline through our agricultural location. And the other option is LNG. You mentioned about LNG, but I think it's also not really good because the volume, yeah, because what I know is LNG is mostly for bigger volume of gas. And the problem is our source of biomethane is most likely maybe only around 1.3 mmCFD per day. So it's not really big and not suitable for LNG. And that's why we're looking into more low pressure technology such as the adsorbent. But I think this is not required in Europe because you already have a lot of infrastructure to distribute the biomethane. So this is my understanding, but please correct if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe there's one more possibility. Sorry for directly replying to this.
No problem.
Because I mentioned only the natural gas grid, but there's the second possibility for the gas grid is using a biogas grid, which can sure run on very low pressure level and only needs to dewater and desulfurize. It depends then on the capacity of the plant and the application technique which you want to use. Because if you only want to bring the energy source to the city, then it's maybe a biogas grid where you applicate it in the GHB if it is needed there. If it still have then use a need to distribute it to each household, then it would be maybe better to bottle it directly at the biogas plant. But these are this is the whole problem of this positive advantages we have. You have to make sure, we have to clarify which purpose you have, which distance, which capacity, etc. And that's the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Herman Decker, please.
Yeah, just a quick reaction. Indeed, use the demand and also the distribution channels is prohibiting maybe a fast uptake. However, I think we can turn the table around as well. Because what I think is one of the major ones, which is prohibiting the uptake, is the diesel price in itself. Although in some islands, which are remote, diesel price is high due to the transport and all that. But in a lot of cases, the diesel and the fossil fuel price is very low, also due to the subsidies given to that. And I think a large portion of the Bio-CNG, like in some cases in Malaysia, is being used as well, can be used by industry. And industry is, and we know that from Europe as well, increasingly interested, and especially those international companies, but increasingly interested to use renewable sources of energy for their heating purposes. We can think of various industries. So that is something we really can tackle, and we can use the CN3 trucks to fill that and to send it to those plants, like already happening in some countries. So my proposition would be to the Indonesian government, two ways. One is, if and of course it is always the case, money is always difficult to spend. So why not say it is obligatory for every palm oil mill to have a biogas plant? In that way, and I've just calculated it on the site with Pak Windri, on that way you can already save 10 to even 20% of the greenhouse gases of Indonesia on an annual basis. Then, that doesn't cost the government any money. The second part is ensure that the industry by year get an increased amount target on uptake of biomethane. That can be both in industry as well as transport. That even doesn't cost the government any money, but will ensure that the distribution, where we are now talking about, will be solved, because it has to be solved. It doesn't cost any money, and I'm sure that the industry is very interested in it. And if I may, I just have one extra note to that. We should not forget about the CO2 itself from the plants. Because if we have the distribution system set up, once these things are in place, you can use the same distribution system to distribute the liquid CO2, which is biogenic, and going to the industry as well. Just a few things to think about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hamendeke, for the ideas or remark. There's maybe who maybe will make a note for this. Mr. Alexi Moscow, do you have any comment, remark?
Yes, I have an additional remark. I would love to. I'm totally support the input of Harman, especially if we are talking about biodiesel or palm oil production in Indonesia. We should not forget the sustainability requirements in other markets. And if, for example, Indonesian producers of palm oil want to secure their share in the foreign markets, the sustainability must be also considered. And by sustainability, I mean, of course, the greenhouse gas emissions from the production. So that means reduction of GHG at every point of the production chain. And of course, usage of residues from the palm oil production.
Okay, thank you. We have no time more for this discussion, but we have a Q&A session. But there's some remark to Hamendeke from the chat room. Pumps are too far away to use the biogas in way suggested. Maybe because the palm oil mills normally is located in the remote area inside the plantation and so on, far away from the industry and so on. But we can discuss later. Okay. Now we come to the Q&A from the question from the floor. Maybe Mbak Novi can help me to read the question, please.
Maybe one addition, Abdul, to what mentioned Harman. If you set the requirements, the obligation right, then the industry will find the right solution. That's the important point.
Okay, yes. There's also possibility.
Will develop always the right solutions for each case if the right obligations are set. That's the main point. And they will find the most efficient one.
Okay, noted. Mbak Novi, we come to the Q&A session, please.
Okay. So yeah, we have noted some very interesting questions. We have here from Mr. Irhan from BBPT. Actually, he asked 2 times, so he asked 2 questions. The first is to Ms. Andrea Febi. The question is, this Bio-CNG application is still limited to the use of diesel for private usage, not commercial scale. In transportation fuel usage, there are no supporting trade system regulations. By following the existing regulation, the CNG selling price limit is 3,000 rupiah per liter, which is not profitable. So it is difficult to sell Bio-CNG as a transport fuel because it has to compete with CNG from fossil. How is the government support to overcome this? That was the first question. Maybe one by one.
Arman or Alexi?
This question is actually,
So Phoebe, isn't it, the question?
Yeah, it's directed to Ms. Andrea Febi, but maybe you can also add comments later.
Okay,
if Ms. Febi can answer, that would be great, and otherwise I can chip in.
Okay, I think it's the difficult question, I think, yeah. But I already answered in the chat. Maybe Pak Irhan can read the answer that already written in the chat. Yeah. Actually, now, as I mentioned before, we have no specific regulation on the biomethane. So we need some assessment, we need some pilot project to make sure what kind of business we have to develop, and then what about the price, what about the cost. So it's, I think, yeah, we need some information on that, and we still have to assess it. I cannot give a satisfied answer for that, I think, in this time. But again, yeah, we try to have a good solution in developing of the biomethane. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Febi.
Yeah. Okay, so we're looking forward to the update, Mas Febi. Okay, any additional comments?
So to respond, Novi, from Harman proposal, because you mentioned that you proposed that obligatory for palm oil or other private sector to build the biogas. Yeah, of course, that's very good, but it will put a burden to the private sector, of course. And I think quite difficult, yeah, to implement that obligatory, because I think government already think about that, yeah, Bu Febi, I think too. But it's quite difficult because private sector also need to find the benefit, financial benefit from building the biogas or biomethane, or else it will be difficult for us to build one, even though is, yeah, of course, is emission friendly and also is maybe still competitive in price, but I think it will be difficult because yeah, we still need like in Europe, you have incentive, very big incentive. I see that from Alexei presentation, but currently we don't have that right now. So I think it must be balanced here, and must be taken step by step to develop this biomethane. Yeah, of course, we need target, but for the implementation, we need to be more realistic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe if you can
please.
allow, I can react on this. I fully concur with Pak Windry. I think we should be careful with regard to the industry on setting targets and imposing very large costs on them. However, having said that, first of all, the Indonesian government, like every government in the world, has a huge task with regard to curbing the CO2 emissions. And what is clear, the biogas, via the biogas production, it can be very quickly, we can reach a goal with curbing 10 to 20% of the total emissions of Indonesia. Not any country in the world can do this, but in Indonesia, Malaysia, in this archipel, this is definitely possible. So that is something to bear in mind. And then that is, of course, to make it obligatory that for POMI and maybe some other waste handling, this is going to be used. That way, we can, without cost for the Indonesian government, we can make sure that we curb the CO2 emissions. The second part is, of course, on the demand side, as you mentioned. Now, in Europe, we get increasing demands for the industry. It is very soft. It is not as hard. So, for example, there is a demand for 3.5% of advanced biofuels within Europe to be used, only 3.5%. And that will be raised over the years. They are now talking about raising that in the coming legislations to go further. So we should have an increased slope in usage to ensure that the industry can adjust. But I see at the same time, talking to companies like Heineken or to Scania or to other companies, DHL, that they want to move faster than that. And they are really requesting, say, the biomethane, even though if it's a little bit more expensive, just because they need to meet their own internal targets. So definitely possible. And I would certainly start with this. And maybe later the Indonesian government can think about even supporting it to accelerate. And then if there is a subsidy, they should also take to bear in mind that if you subsidize biomethane, you do not have to subsidize the fossil fuel anymore because they are the same. So if you use biomethane, you don't have to use diesel. So it doesn't cost any money either. Extra money, I have to say.
Thank you very much. There are many questions from the floor. From the audience.
We have selected some, Mr. Abdul Halik. Maybe shall I read the next one? We apologize for some questions and comments that we cannot respond to all of those because we have very limited time. So allow me to read the next one. It's from Ricardo from Czech University of Life Science. His question is to Mr. Alexi and Mr. Herman. What can we learn from the context of European in convincing users to adopt biogas as resources of energy? Did you face rejection? And what did you do to change the user behavior? For Indonesian context, the driver for adoption of biogas mostly driven from industry, palm oil, milk production, etc.
Just a short remark. Ricardo is Indonesian PhD student in Czech. So, thanks. Please, Armin, Alexi.
Armin, will you start with the European prospect?
Yes, yes, I can, but I spoke already so much. Why don't you take the floor?
Yes, sure. Well, I would connect my message definitely to the word or to the statement of Harman. I truly believe that there are different ways of or different possibilities how to accelerate the biomethane or biogas usage in Indonesia. Of course, the companies, international companies, can be interested in this energy carrier, definitely because of their own sustainability obligations, especially if we are speaking of companies which are working in the food processing area. This could be one point. Another thing, as far as I know, there is quite big interest of, for example, Japanese government in the greenhouse gas certificates, which could be produced in other countries like in Indonesia, and the Japanese government even established some sort of information point in Jakarta to accelerate biogas projects in Indonesia to buy the greenhouse gas certificates and bring them to Japan. So I think from all that small pieces, you can create the whole picture, so to say, from many small incentives. You can create a whole big picture. Definitely, I can imagine that installing a feed-in tariff, maybe it will be too bold step for the first time, but obligations for palm oil producers, incentives from abroad. It might be interesting start, and we really should not forget the self-supply with biogas and biomethane, because diesel prices, they are, I can assume, especially in the island regions, they are pretty high. So I can imagine that biomethane can be a good substitution in case of self-supply. I hope I was able to answer the question.
Okay.
Because in Germany, it's of course totally different situation. As I've said, it is feed-in tariff and European obligation. We have, for example, in the fuel sector targets, and they must be fulfilled. So of course, you'll see the result in the rising prices for fuel. But it's a bit different situation in Germany compared to, for example, Southeast Asia.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hamen, do you have any comment? Oh, next. Okay.
I think Alexei explained it very well.
Okay, thank you. Mbak Novi, next question. Still, you have to unmute first, Novi.
All right, sorry. So yeah, we have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we have limited time, so let me read the next one selected by the organizer. It's from Mr. Setio from PT DSN to Mr. Alexei. Liquefied Bio-CNG is ideal way to distribute Bio-CNG, but cryogenic technology is very, very expensive. Do you have any solution in terms of effective Bio-CNG distribution?
Speaking of liquefied biomethane, of course, these kind of plants are expensive, although there are different solutions. So the plant for the same amount with the same capacity can cost 500,000 euros or 5 million euros. It depends on the different technology, on the operational costs. I would avoid making advertisement for manufacturers, but the price range can be really huge. So there, I can imagine that there may be a solution even for markets like Southeast Asian, where we can liquefy, or where can be found a solution for liquefaction of biomethane. If we focus on compressing biomethane, I think it's much more major technology compared to liquefaction. Although I would like to mention that in Europe, there are so far 20 to 30 liquefaction units. but compression definitely. It's basically different markets. If we use a liquefied biomethane as directly as a fuel, for example, for heavy-duty vehicles, this is one market niche. If we want to use bio-LNG, liquefied biomethane, for transport and storage of energy, because there is, for example, no gas grid, it will be a totally different story. So it's always about benefits and concrete business model. What do you need to liquefy biomethane for?
Okay, maybe next question. Banoki.
Okay, let me find the questions. Here we have from Miss Helen from PT Smart Tbk to Mr. Decker. Biogas plant mostly decentralized so that the capacity relatively small. On the other hand, the investment cost for bio-LNG is still high. How to support bio-LNG deployment so that the target as stated in your presentation can be achieved? And this should be the last question because we have only 5 minutes left. Thank you.
Right, I can be relatively short on this. I would not focus on bio-LNG for every biogas plant. What I would do is I would focus first on the production of biogas in total for every plant, which is possible. Then you have to look at the right offtake routes. As Pakwendri already said, sometimes that is for local use, sometimes you can transport it, but sometimes not. Bio-LNG, so liquefying it, it is costly, as it has been said. However, be aware it is coming, because especially the maritime sector will make use of it in the coming years, because they need to greenify, if that's a word, need to greenify their shipping fleet. So they will need not only to bunker bio-LNG in Europe or in the States, but also in Asia. If you have that available, that will be absolutely very great. And even if that are small amounts, I'm sure they will offtake it, even if it's a little bit more expensive. So that will be those POMI mills or biogas plants which are close to a good network, good distribution channel, so you can get it out. Once that is going, I'm sure that over the years, more and more can produce that either or CNG or bio-LNG for that matter. So it is a question of timing and distribution channels.
Thank you. Mr. Franz Kirchmeier, do you have any comment on it?
Maybe what we didn't mention so far, as Harman introduced a very good possibility to accelerate the market, was we need to think also about CO2 taxes. As European Union is now discussing CO2 border tax, it will come up to all nations that you have to minimize or curb their CO2 mitigation on the products they sell to other countries, to abroad. And one of those international markets, and to control this international markets, will be also a CO2 tax. So it's not avoiding how can we avoid those taxes. It's much more how can we accelerate being part of this new market.
Thank you. Mr. Alexi?
No, I think it's as I've said, this picture contains from many small puzzle points: self-supply, greenhouse gas reduction over the production chain, different market niches, power generation, fuel production. It must be a comprehensive approach. We need to, the Indonesian government needs to install or support biogas and biomethane production targeting different target groups and different market niches. So it will be a not easy task, definitely, but I truly believe with that amount of bio wastes from food processing, from agriculture in Indonesia, it is a low-hanging fruit in Indonesia to save huge amount of greenhouse gases with relatively small incentives, which you need to accelerate biogas and biomethane industry.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we come to the end of the webinar, but may I give some conclusion on it. I just read again some keyword, the unique role of biogas, as Mr. Harman-Dekker said, and biogas solves many problems at the same time. Biogas is multi-problem solver, and I think interesting thing is also that Mr. Harman-Dekker also proposed or give an idea that we should intensify the biogas production phase first, and then we come to the Bio-CNG and so on. And from Mr. Alexei Moscope, the important thing is, I think, the motivation sentence, biogas is the intelligent energy solution for the future. I think that thank you very much for Bu Febi first, and Pak Windri, Mr. Harman-Dekker, Mr. Alexei Moscope, Mr. Franz Kichmeyer, and also I thank Mbak Novi for helping me moderating and this webinar. Thank you very much, and maybe Mbak Novi can close this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Abdul Khalik for chairing the session. It was very informative, interesting, and inspiring discussion. Also, thank you to Ms. Febi, Mr. Harman, Mr. Alexei for giving us great presentation, and Mr. Windri, Mr. Franz for adding interesting and important points during the discussion. Of course, to all the participants today, especially for the Q&A session. Today's workshop covered information from policymakers from Indonesia, as well as lesson learned sharing from Europe. I think it was a very nice combination for us who joined today. Unanswered questions will be answered on the post-event report by
pertanyaan-pertanyaan
email.
juga akan dijawab melalui email.
Yeah. Don't worry that your unanswered question on the Q&A today will be answered through the email on a post-event report. And then one little announcement: the certificate for this workshop will be delivered by organizer through email too, that you registered on the list of attendance. I think that's all. Hopefully this workshop is beneficial for everyone today. Thank you very much for joining and have a good time.
Ya, terima kasih semuanya.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.
Harman.
Thank you, Harman, Franz, Pak Windri, Pak Abdul, Mbak Novi, dan Bu Febi. Terima kasih banyak.
Sama-sama, Mbak.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Thank you, everyone.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu yang sudah hadir.
Thank you.
For all participants and Kanadia, don't we have to take